Let's next take up Representative Ella Wilkinson's bill, House Bill 71884.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, fellow members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. House Bill 7184 seeks to protect the rhinoceros and elephants by attacking the issue of demand. So what are rhino horns and what are the horns from a elephant used for? For the rhino horn, they're used typically for the handles of daggers. They're carved into cups, buttons, buckles, hairpins, paperweights. They are being ground in the use of traditional Chinese medicine, shaved and ground into a powder, dissolved in hot water, to treat fever and rheumatitis and gout and other disorders. But even in the practice of traditional Chinese medicine, that practice was disproved decades ago by the Chinese University in Hong Kong. So even that is not truly a valid reason for the rhino horn. The horns are actually typically taken from the animal after killing it, even though the horn could actually be removed surgically. But that's not what the poachers are going to do. They're obviously not going to put the animal to sleep, remove its horn. Same thing with the elephant tusk. What are they using the tusks for? Billiard balls, piano keys they were at one time, carvings, buttons, needles, and so forth. In all of the current uses of ivory, these items can now be made by plastics or a polymer, a synthetic ivory called ivorite, which was actually developed in the 1980s by Yamaha. So we haven't had, pianos have not been using standard ivory in decades as well. So I had a colleague say to me, is this really a problem, and is there an issue with ivory, and isn't that something that's days gone by? But the fact of the matter is, on February 5th, just last week, February 5th of 2018, Esmond Bradley, who is a U.S. investigator of ivory and rhino horn trade, was actually murdered in Kenya. And he was in the midst of investigating illegal activities of trade and traffickers. Again, the issue is dealing with poaching by attacking the demand for it, and that's what I'm seeking to do with this bill. We, as a country, had the ban enacted by President Obama in 2014. We led the world on this global fight, and I believe that Rhode Island should continue by picking up the standard for the fight and protecting these majestic animals. There is no need to have the horn, the rhino horn, or the elephant tusks, and let's just decide, as we have protected animals all along in this session and in others, whether it's the animals that are being chained together on someone's property or attacking the demand for the ivory and the tusk. Let's just stand together, make a decision. We are a state that protects our animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the sponsor?
I have a question, Chairman.
Yes. Representative Canario.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Rep, I'm looking at page 3, line 1 through 5. I'm a little bit confused about the possession, the current possession of ivory, lawful possession. If someone has had this product in their possession and wished to sell it or give it or whatever, I don't see this part of the law that protects that.
Thank you for the question, Representative. The issue is to eliminate the demand. If an individual owns a product that has ivory embedded in it, whether it be the stock of a gun or whether it be some type of a hair comb or something that's an item of decor, they would have the ability to, and if you look at it in line 3, if it's part of an estate, they would be able to legally convey that to the beneficiaries, their beneficiaries upon their death. Sale, no, because my goal is to eliminate the demand for the sale of ivory. If they want to convey it, if they want to give it to someone as a gift, that's perfectly fine. But if it's in the possession of a wholesaler, if it's in the possession of a retailer, if it's in the possession of a one of these houses that does auctions, an auctioneer, that's a conveyance of sale, and that's what I'm seeking to eliminate.
Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Price.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess a question for the sponsor. What's the proposed, what do you propose to do with all the ivory that's already out there in circulation that, you know, is in gun stocks and in hair combs and at auctions and stuff? What are we supposed to do with all this stuff at that point?
Well, I could answer it in the negative. What we're supposed to do is not bring it into the state of Rhode Island. I have no control over what happens elsewhere outside of the state, but as a state representative who's making a firm, bright line in the sand with regards to the protection of wild animals, if they want to sell it, they can sell it, but not within the state of Rhode Island. Find another state that is not as adamant about protecting wildlife.
And I'm not advocating, you know, killing wildlife or anything. I'm just trying to figure out what to do with this merchandise that has value and maybe historical value and.
If it has historical value, Representative, then as there may be a demand for historical items such as that in the state, I'm certainly there would be seekers outside of the state of Rhode Island. But as far as I'm concerned, my goal is to eliminate the demand for ivory, elephant tusks, or the rhino horn within the state of Rhode Island. If someone decides that they want to sell it in Connecticut or Alaska or any of the other states that have not enacted the ban, then they're free to do so. But I don't want to see it for sale in the state of Rhode Island.
Thank you.
Representative Vice Chairwoman McEntee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, I just was wondering about antiques and antique dealers. I think that's what we're getting at, right? And I commend you for this bill. I think it's a great bill. But I'm just not certain how we go back and say, if someone bought an antique that, say, had some kind of ivory in it, I'm not sure what that would be, but maybe it's inlaid or in furniture or something, and they've already expended money, but you know they haven't gone out and continued the act. It's just something that's been in an antique store or a family or whatever. So how would you address that? They can't sell that even though it's 200 years old or something?
Are you saying someone that, is it in a private possession, Representative, or are you saying
I'm saying
a
in
dealer?
an antique store. Like you can go into an antique store, you'll see. I would imagine. I can't think of an example right now, but I have seen some things in the past. You know, so it's not like they're continuing the act. This is an old piece.
No,
so.
I understand that, and I've seen some of those pieces that you're referring to. Some of them have the ivory inlaid in Chinese screens or in
Right.
some of the bureaus and so forth. There is nothing that would prevent that merchant from selling it outside of the state.
Okay.
Again, I'm sure that I sound very strident, but at what point do we say enough is enough? If you let that one go, then what is going to stop the next buyer from deciding to sell? I mean, the ivory itself is considered a very prized item in China, in Vietnam, in Laos, and we're getting buyers that are going to these countries and they're purchasing ivory-laid items and they're bringing it into the States. If they want to go to Christie's or some other auction house and have it sold outside of the state of Rhode Island, mazel tov, go ahead and do it, but not in the state. Again, the only way that we're going to address this continuous poaching, the mindless killing of these animals to the tune of approximately 30 per day, is if we eliminate the demand. And the only way that I can see, and I'm open to suggestions, but the only way that I could see to eliminate the demand for ivory and rhino tusk in the state of Rhode Island is to make the sale of it illegal. If someone already has it, if they have a relic or a collectible stock as a gun, if they have their great-grandmother's hair combs, if they have a Chinese screen or whatever it happens to be in, if they want to give that item to a museum, if they want to use that as part of their estate, they have the right to do that. But I am seeking to make the sale of those items illegal in the state of Rhode Island.
Representative Filippi.
Thank you, Chairman. I think a lot of these antiques are of great value, and before the state confiscates that value and takes away the marketability of those items, we should look at other ways to eliminate the demand, yet preserve the value of those items that people have expended their hard-earned cash to purchase. I suggest one way we can do that is to have a registry in this state that all items sold or transferred within this state that contain ivory must be certified as of this date to exist in the state of Rhode Island. And any transfer of an ivory item that doesn't have that state certification can't be transferred. So the items that are here now can be transferred, and there will be no new ivory imported and be able to be transferred within the state of Rhode Island. The poaching that this is aimed at, I think, will be inhibited, maybe even stopped, because nothing that doesn't exist in Rhode Island on this date as of now can be sold or transferred in the future if it doesn't have that state certificate as to presence in the state of Rhode Island as of this date. I think that might be a fair way to accomplish your goals and also preserve the value of some things people have spent thousands, many tens of thousands of dollars purchasing, potentially as an investment.
That sounds like a reasonable alternative, Rep. I'd like to look into that, but I will tell you that although I have not had anyone reach out to me about it, I would anticipate a gun owner for collectibles and relics that has a stock that has ivy inlaid reject the idea of having now to be on a register because the long gun has ivory in it. And I would anticipate that as being a problem. But I like where you're going on this, and I would love to work with you on this particular thing. I think that's reasonable. I just want to make sure that it's reasonable 360 degrees.
And I agree. And as to the point of the registry, I am concerned with the firearm registries. I think if we were to pass the idea that I just posited, that firearms owner would have a choice. Do I want to join the registry and preserve the economic value of my asset? Or I don't join the registry by the set date. I don't get my firearm certified as containing ivory on the set date. And then at that point, if they make the choice not to get certified, they would lose the economic value of their firearm.
All right, I'd like to work with you on that language.
I'd like to.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions for the sponsor? Representative Price.
Thank you, Chairman. So as far as the federal regulations on this go, I can't speak on the whole issue, but from what on the layman's terms, from what I understand, that our new federal government administration is upholding the ban and opposition to harvesting and killing of elephants and to get the ivory from them. I don't know if anybody in the House can speak further on that. But
It is my understanding, Representative, that although the current administration had considered repealing the ban, that they have, to coin a phrase from our own leadership, held it for further study, and so the ban is still in effect, but for the length of time, I have no way of knowing. So there was a movement to eliminate the ban, and then it was held for study.
so it's still enacted.
It's currently active. That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for the sponsor? Okay, we have Carolyn Murray on behalf of the National Shooting Sports Foundation submitted written testimony in opposition, and Bob Goldberg is here to testify on behalf of the Humane Society of the U.S.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I am here this afternoon on behalf of the Humane Society of the United States, and they do support this legislation. This is an important piece of legislation to animal lovers everywhere, and I'd just like to follow up on a few of the points that the sponsor has mentioned. First, I'd point out to you that similar legislation has already been passed in recent years in New Jersey, New York, California, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, and Nevada. And while the intent, as I understand and read the legislation, is not to directly affect any practices currently going on in the state other than the ownership, the slaughter is not occurring here, but it is a worldwide global problem. And I am told that it is one of an $8 to $10 billion a year global problem, and it's all conducted by criminal enterprises, and it has been fostered by some of the instability in Africa, the native home of these animals. And what this bill does is this bill attacks the intra-state sale and transfer of these products, as opposed to the interstate, which is why the states have taken up this practice, as the federal law only covers interstate issues. But if you look at the, in my humble opinion, if you look at the first page of the legislation, lines 7 through 14, is very, very powerful language, and those lines, to me, justify the intent, the purpose, and the value of this legislation. I'm available for any questions that the answers are on this sheet, but with that said, the Humane Society does in fact support this legislation.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Goldberg? Thank you.
Thank you.
The committee has received written testimony from Doug Ritter at Knife Rights in opposition to this bill, and Robert Mitchell on behalf of elephantprotection.org is also in opposition, and as I said, the National Shooting Sports Foundation submitted a letter in opposition as well. And with that, we will conclude testimony on House Bill 7184